right, if we could have everybody start to take your seats. Hey, Josh, can you round up the group from out there and start bringing them in?
All right, we're going to start off this afternoon with some staff presentations, and to kick things off, Mr. Mark Duda with Responsive Management. He's going to talk a little bit today about Pennsylvania deer hunters' attitudes regarding opening day of deer season. Good. Thank you.
Could you hear what I said previous to that? I know it's good. And he was responsible for setting up commissioners, citizen commissions, to assist state agencies make important decisions. But one of the more important things that he said, he was sort of a biologist. He wrote Sand County Almanac that I bet you've read, game management. And he said that the problem of wildlife management is not how we should handle the deer. The real problem is one of human management. Wildlife management is comparatively easy. Human management is difficult. And if you think about all of the things that you do, and you're sort of in the center here as fish and wildlife professionals, we deal really with three different aspects of fish and wildlife management. We deal with fish and wildlife populations, we deal with fish and wildlife habitats, and we deal with people on the opposite side. And we're sort of always looking at the give and take of all of those. And, you know, really since agencies began in the 1930s or so, Duck Stamp, Pittman Robertson in 37, we've really done a great job with fish and wildlife management in terms of things that we brought back from wood duck to elk and all of those iconic species, all the habitat we've restored. And the reason that we've done that is we've done that in a very scientific, credible manner, sort of a deliberate manner. We use science to understand fish and wildlife populations and fish and wildlife habitats. But it's really been over the only past 20, 30 years or so that we've applied science to people on that sort of other side. Before that, people used to come in and they'd send you mail before email existed, or catch you in a grocery store and say, well, this is what all the hunters think. This is what everybody thinks. And so the truth is, this whole thing of human dimensions is really in that corner over there, the human populations. And essentially what it's doing is applying science, approaching that in a very scientific, deliberate, and orderly manner to the same issues that you've been doing it for 100 years when it comes to wildlife management and habitat issues. And so we're sort of here to talk about some of the science. You're also responsible for my company, Responsive Management. I've had the same job now for 32 years, so I kind of got stuck there. Now, actually, it's not really true, because Responsive Management was started by the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, of which you all were a member in 1985. I worked for them for 5 years and then went out on my own in 1990. So since 1990, for the past 32 years, we've been studying how people relate to conservation. Everything from grizzly bears to salmon, and if there's a controversial issue, we're involved with that. And we've done work for every single state fish and wildlife agency over those 32 years. Every federal agency, every single major NGO, Ducks Unlimited, National Wild Turkey Federation, National Shooting Sports Foundation, all of the major industry, as well as about 35 universities, major top universities, from Auburn, Clemson, Colorado State, Stanford, USC, Yale, and so on. I was thinking about that when I was looking at that, and it's kind of interesting. I did a project for Clemson University, and the year after that, they won the national title. I did a project for Louisiana State University. About 3 months after that, they won a national title. Did work for Alabama, and they won a national title. So I don't know, I think I'm up for sale for Penn State or UPenn or whoever it might be. I don't know, but I think there's a relationship there. I'm not sure, but anyways, if Penn State does win the national title next year, you can write me an email and thank me. So, anyways, I'm here to talk about surveys, and I've been doing that for a long time, doing scientific surveys, and I want to just talk about sort of the scientific credibility of those. In 2008, pollsters were able to predict the presidential election in every single state except for one in 2008, doing surveys of 800 to 1,000 people in major states with millions of people. In 2012, all 50 states were predicted by credible pollsters. Every single state, we were able to predict how that election was going to go, how those electoral college votes were going to go in that state. 2016 was an aberration. There's lots of reasons for that. But then again, in 2020, pollsters were able to predict how those elections in their states were going to go to within about a percentage or two. So for 32 years, I've been doing survey research, and I only do natural resource environmental work. But I've actually started over the past couple years, 3-4 years, started to do some polling for a lot of the universities. And the only reason I really do that is for this reason in this moment right here, to come back and tell you if somebody says, well, you said that our hunters think this, how do you know that that's true? So I can tell you, last year in Virginia, we do all the work for the University of Virginia system, and a study that we did for the Virginia Commonwealth University, we predicted that presidential election through talking to 800 people in a scientific manner within about 1.5 percentage points of how that election went. Biden won the state by about 10 points. We predicted that within 1.5%, 2 days before that happened. So recently, Biden's a Democrat, so you would think that Virginia, where I'm from, is a Democratic state. People say, oh, Virginia is a Democratic state. So we started doing the polling for Virginia Commonwealth University before the gubernatorial election, and we saw those polls move and move and move. 3 days before the election, we had predicted, as had really good quality other survey firms, that indeed a Republican would take the governor's seat. And he did. He won by 1.5%. So I just want to say that because people are always like, well, why do you do these things? How can they be accurate? Oh, we heard this or we heard that. Be glad to answer any questions you have. But the methodology that we did here with you all was very similar in terms of its scientific and rigorousness. Is that a word? And the rigor of it. But let's take a look now in terms of what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you sort of about 5 different things here in this presentation. I'm going to talk about the methodology that we used. a little bit about deer hunting participation as it relates to opening day. Opening day and opinions on opening day of the regular firearms season. Attitudes toward the change in opening day. I could probably talk for 2 minutes or 20 minutes, but I'll give you the 20-minute version because I know that's what you're most interested in, as well as its impact on youth and youth deer hunting. So let's take a look at the study methodology. This was, again, a scientific study. The major reason that we were hired by the department, by the commission, was to determine resident deer hunters' participation in and attitudes regarding opening day of the regular firearms deer season. It was a scientific probability-based telephone survey, and we completed that with over 2,000 of your hunters. Generally, on statewide studies, you can get by with 800 to 1,000. So this was a double what sort of you usually see in that. And the sampling error, when we look at that, is only about 2 percentage points. So if I say it's 60%, it could be anywhere between 62% and 58%. At least 95% of the time, it's called a 95% confidence interval. And so this study was not of just every hunter in your database. When we worked with the commission, it was determined that who we really wanted to talk to and to be eligible for the survey, that hunters had to have hunted deer during the regular firearms season at least once during 2017 and 2018, and that's when opening day was the Monday after Thanksgiving, and then at least once during the 2019, 20, or 21 seasons. So these people had the opportunity to experience both Monday and then Saturday. So then finally, you all provided the sample to us. Thank you to Corin and all her help and all the folks in the licensing department that helped us out on that. The survey was conducted right after the season this year in November and December of 21. So then the question is, well, you had this database of hundreds of thousands of hunters, and you just picked them. We picked those randomly, of course, based on that criteria that I was talking about. And then so the question is, well, how does that match what's really out there? Somebody does a survey of the general population in Pennsylvania and say 70% were men. You should be scared because that's not what it is. It's 51-49 or so. So this one, and I can just put this up for a minute, that gets a little bit small for the audience, but I know that you have those numbers in front of you, that when you compare individuals by age, by gender, and license type, who we talked to matched literally exactly what was in that database. So sometimes pollsters will weight their data. They'll do a survey. They'll get 80% women. Well, it's not really 80% women. It's 50% women in the general population. They shrink that down, and all sorts of weird things can happen. But the good news on this is we didn't have to do a thing because our sample, the people that we interviewed, matched the database almost exactly. And the other thing is that it was amazing how usually you'll get refusals in studies like, that we'll do. In this one, I think we had, I'm not sure we had any true refusals. It was incredible. So the study went really well. The other thing that we did is that even though we did it statewide, we analyzed the data by region. I'm going to talk to you just about a lot of the statewide numbers, but if you're interested, because I know each of you represents a certain region in the state, in the Commonwealth, that you can go back and see exactly what your hunters think in your region. So that's a lot of data available, but of course I can't cover it here because of time. So let's take a look, sort of just some simple things at the beginning in terms of the hunters and the hunters we talked to, understanding the criteria that we had. The average number of days hunted during that season, the firearm season, was about 4.41, so almost about 4.5 days or so. Season being, I think, what, 15? Was it 15 days? Is that how many total days are in that season? It's about, I think that's what it is. But anyway, so you can see the distribution on that, with an average of about 4.4 days that your hunters are out there hunting during that rifle deer season, in this past season. So then the question is, well, who are these people? Are they increasing in their participation? Are they decreasing? You can see here that most of them over the past few years, the past 5 years sort of in question, and the people who had hunted during those seasons, about 50% remain the same although 35% of your hunters who met that criteria said that their participation had decreased during that time. So then we had people who said that their participation increased and participation that decreased. And so in an open-ended manner, we said, well, why did it decrease? These people did not know this was about the regulation at hand. We didn't tell them up front because we wanted to be neutral about it until we started getting to those questions. So we said, well, why did your participation increase of those who did? And you can see had more time with children, and then the third one was the addition of Saturday or Sunday to the hunting season. And, you know, people, when I used to do a lot of these studies on hunters, people also say, well, you know, time, you know, that's a crutch for something that is really something else. But it's not. I mean, we saw hunting participation increase across the U.S. last year because of COVID. People had more time. We saw that in 2008 during the Great Recession and the housing crash. So time is a real issue. And I know that you know that, but that's an issue unto itself. But having more time is the reason that your hunters who hunted more increased. So then we wanted to know of those people who said that it had decreased, why that it had decreased. Age and health, lack of time were by far the most important. And people could have said multiple things in this, so they could have said all three of those. So then let's take a look at opening day of the regular firearms season. The first thing we want to know is simply, well, do they typically or ever have hunted opening day of that regular firearms deer season? Almost all of them had at one point, 91%. And then when hunting deer on opening day, do they typically travel to hunt? Because that's certainly, when we started looking into it from a qualitative perspective, we wanted to know. We heard a lot about traveling. And so of all of those individuals who typically hunt on opening day, about 44%, almost half of folks are traveling. So 44%, 55% aren't, 1% don't know, not sure what their deal was, but that's allowed. Don't know, Mon, dude, I don't know. You don't remember? But we're not allowed to say things like that, so we just take it as is. So let's now take a look at the people who travel, because the question is, on the left-hand side, when you hunt on opening day, do you go to a hunting camp? Now that's of the people who travel. And of those people who travel, about half of them do, 48 to 52. And then the graph on the right is when you travel to hunt on opening day, do you go to a hunting camp? I put that among all of your hunters. So among all of those hunters that met that criteria of having hunted in the 17-18 season and the either 20-21, 19-20, 21 season, having hunted on opening day and have traveled. So about 21% hunts on opening day at a hunting camp. About 23% travel to hunt on opening day, but not at a hunting camp. And then about 56% don't travel far enough to stay somewhere else. Does that make sense? So it's sort of this subset of a subset. So we wanted to know if they traveled, half of them do, and then about half of those who travel go to a hunting camp. So then the question is are they hunting on both that Saturday and Sunday, those hunters who hunted this opening day season in 21. And so a lot did. 86% had hunted on that Saturday, and then that dropped fairly substantially to 60% on the following Sunday. So you'd think if you were out there, you'd hunt the whole time, but that actually wasn't true. We went from 86%, these are the same people, to 60%. Okay, so this is where the drum roll is, because I know people have heard about this. Do people support it? Do people oppose it? And so let's take a look in terms of those attitudes toward the change in opening day. So again, you try to be as unbiased as possible in a survey like this. Do you support or oppose? Do you agree or disagree on a scale of 0 to 10? And so we said, do you support or oppose the regular firearms deer season opening day being on the Saturday after Thanksgiving? And you can see some strong opinions there. 44% strongly supporting, and 18% strongly opposing. Total of about 60% support and about 27% opposed. So about 2 to 1. So surprisingly, about 12% didn't have an opinion. I'm sure that on your speed dial, Director and Commissioners, you probably talked to those people on the strongly support and the strongly oppose. So, yeah. But now the question is, okay, so we know that for about 2 to 1, but there's more to it. So who are those people? Who are the people who support this, and who are the people who oppose? And the reason this survey was a little bit longer is because we wanted to know all of those characteristics to cross-tabulate that by. Now I'm going to apologize in advance, and I've been apologizing to audiences for 35 years, but you all can see this here, is that what I did is this is what I call a super graph, and all my speeches come with binoculars if you don't have it, but I know the commissioners have this in front of them, because this is one of the more important parts of the study, and that is who supports opening day on that Saturday versus who does not. And so let's just go down that, and I'll read that for the audience. So what you see is in the center, remember that was the 60% of all your hunters who supported opening day on the Saturday after Thanksgiving. So that's that light gray line at 60% halfway down. But at the top, those individuals that were most supportive of having opening day on the Saturday after Thanksgiving were those whose hunting had increased, your female hunters, your hunters with children, your younger hunters, 35 to 54, and those in 18 to 34-year-old category, those who reside in the Southwest region, and those who do not hunt at a hunting camp on opening day. And then it sort of goes down from there, and I have that data, you have the report. But let's take a look now at the opposite end. Those are the people who support opening day on the Saturday after Thanksgiving. Let's take a look at those who oppose it. Remember that 27% of your hunters opposed having opening day on the Saturday after Thanksgiving. And so that line is in the middle there. But when you cross-tabulate it out, the very top of the list, 40% of those who hunt at a hunting camp on opening day oppose that. Those who hunted more than 10 days this season, so you're more avid hunters, those who reside in North Central, and those over 55 years of age, and then those who had their deer hunting decrease in the past 5 years, and then so on. We can talk about those, but I think those are important to talk about, those at the top. So all of a sudden you're seeing that, and you're probably thinking, wow, that's what I'm hearing out there. And so, so from a quantified perspective, that's what's happening. So then the question is, so I talked about a crosstab, so we're going to go back now. Remember we asked, do they support or oppose? Then in an open-ended manner, we asked those who supported it why they supported it. And this was open-ended. We spent probably close to a week and a half looking through all of these and categorizing them. But these were the ones at the top. Work obligations on Monday, they'd need to take vacation. That's why they support it. Increased hunting opportunities. And then lower down, child's school schedule. So then, of course, we wanted to know the reasons that they opposed it. Tradition was at the very top. Tradition is extremely important. Americans love traditions. People love tradition. And that was by far and away the most important that they opposed the regular firearm deer season opening day being on the Saturday after Thanksgiving. The next one, probably not to anybody's surprise, that setup and enjoyment of hunting camp is rushed. And then too rushed after Thanksgiving. And then some various other things. We had lots of other ones, but they were all in the single digits. So then we asked those who opposed having it, so the people who, the 27% who opposed it, what they would support. And on opening day. Sunday after Thanksgiving was only 4%, but you can see a huge majority, upwards of 95%, wanting it to be the Monday after Thanksgiving. That's the 27% that opposed the Saturday. So then we asked everybody, whenever you see that sample size, that 2009 sample size, that's everybody, we said, well, overall, has opening day on the Saturday after Thanksgiving had a positive or negative impact on your deer hunting in Pennsylvania, or has it not had an impact on hunting at all, on your hunting at all? 25% said positive. About half of that said negative, 11%. And then the majority of upwards of over 60% said no impact at all. So people opposed it, but 11% said it had a negative impact. And then so finally, we talk about youth deer hunting, kids being the future of hunting. We wanted to delve into that just a little bit. So the first thing we wanted to know is if they were a parent or a guardian of any children under the age of 18 who also hunt deer. And about 20% of those hunters that met that criteria indeed did have children. So the next question was, well, how many of those children hunted deer on opening day of the regular firearms season? And about 0.91% of those, so not a lot, but about an average of almost one child did hunt during opening day. So then the question is, of the people who had those kids, well, does Saturday opener make it more likely or less likely that your kids, your child or your children, depending on what they answered, will hunt opening day of the regular firearms deer season, or would it have no impact at all on how likely the child is to hunt on opening day? 50% said it would be more likely, and 47% said no impact at all. And then finally, and you probably know this, but we wanted to know if the school that the child attends, these are the parents of these children who hunted, typically close on the Monday after Thanksgiving, and about 83% actually did. So again, just sort of a big brief overview, the survey report that we presented, I don't know if everybody has that yet, if it's been distributed, is quite lengthy. Again, we've looked at age. Every single question in there is cross-tabulated by age, by your region. So if you go through there and you don't care about anybody but your region, that's in there and it's easy to read, by license type and everything else. So be glad to take questions. Again, sort of end where I began, that this is number 7 for me in terms of presenting to you, and it's a huge pleasure. I've actually presented to every single state agency throughout the U.S. that has commissions and stuff over the past 35 years, and y'all are one of my favorites, so I really appreciate it. I know I really appreciate being here, and again, I'm humbled by the officers that you guys honored today. So thank you. Be glad to answer questions or go home.
Mark, I'll start for you. Thank you, first of all, for this. I mean, this was extremely thorough, very, very comprehensive report on what has been probably the most controversial topic since I came on the board. This decision was made just before I came on, and it's been a hot-button topic since then. So you did a very good job explaining, I think you said you sampled 2009 Pennsylvania hunters that fit that certain criteria, and expanded to showing how your polling methodology is proven through the political scene as well. So if you had to very succinctly describe, because I know I'm going to get this question from hunters, right? And I'm not 100% sure that I can articulate it very, very well back to them. We've got 800 and some thousand hunters in the state of Pennsylvania, and 2,000 of them you'll stroke a blank check, I'm pretty sure, to say that you're confident in the data you just presented. And the obvious question to the non-statistician in the room is, man, wrap my head around that in layman's terms, if you will.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a legitimate question, because if I wasn't in the sciences, I would wonder that too. The first thing I would say is that the commission has been doing this for almost 100 years or so. When we look at fish, or when we look at deer, or when we look at ducks, we don't go out there and count every single duck We do scientific sampling of ducks. We do scientific sampling of deer. We do scientific sampling of fish. We never go out and count every deer or every fish. So those numbers have been derived by agencies for years. So that would be the first thing. The second thing I would say is, and if this was 5 or 10 years ago, I would say to you that it was done in a that this survey is very scientific and it's based on science. Now, unfortunately, the past couple of years, the whole science-based thing has become really diluted. We actually just did a really cool study with the Wildlife Management Institute on conservation words that work. And up to 2 or 3 years ago, if you asked me, Mark, how should we talk about this, or how should we talk about this? Let me give you an example. We did a study on trapping, and I used to say that you present trapping as a sanctioned scientific solution. It's sanctioned by you, the credible organization. It's scientific, and it's a solution. It's a means to an end. But unfortunately, the past few years, everybody's got their own scientists saying the same thing. So it's legitimate. But the first thing I would say is that the Commission's been doing, the Game Commission's been doing this for years everywhere else when it comes to counting animals or whatever. The second thing is you just don't have to interview every single hunter to understand what's happening. That if you do that in a true random manner, that you're going to get literally exactly what's out there. It's been proven. Again, if we can predict an election with 800 people a week before that happens, we can tell you what is happening without interviewing every single person. The other thing in having asked that question a lot is that's the very reason you want to do a